We'll talk to Eno Sarris right now of The Athletic, who had a very interesting article yesterday about buyers and sellers. We'll give The Athletic a nice big plug like we do anytime we have Sam Amick or Matt Barrows on the program to really make sure we help guide you towards what I think is the best overall sports journalism going on right now in one place. It's Dave, it's Kyle, it's Jay. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
Good morning, guys. Thanks for having me.
And we were having this conversation in our last segment. The deadline was yesterday. There may not have been any earth-shaking names going back and forth, although Zach Greinke is a big deal. Although Trevor Bauer and Yasiel Puig, those are big names. Marcus Stroman. It just doesn't seem as big as it used to be. My question to you is this. Is it because I'm old and baseball back in the 90s was more popular, or are there things that you think can be done to make the baseball trade deadline more exciting and to grip fans more?
Well, I think that the key to what's happening is that teams all want to build sustainable winning cultures and just sort of sustainable winning rosters. And so the big sort of currency is years of control. It's how long can I have this player? It's not how good it is as much as it is how long can I have him. And so that's why you saw rentals, like J.D. Martinez got traded 2 years ago at the deadline, and he was the best bat at the deadline, but he was a rental, and he got traded for three guys that are not going to make the major leagues probably, and weren't in the top 100 prospects or anything. So that's the sort of thing that's happening now is that, if you've got a rental and you're at all winning, like the Giants with Bumgarner, you might as well keep them. If you have a chance of anything, then you keep them because you're not going to get much for it. And then even the guys that have control, when you're trying to sell guys with control, the teams all want to hold their prospects because they think that prospects are the way that they're going to keep winning. And that's why you didn't see bigger names move that had more years of control. A guy like Robbie Ray was supposedly on the market, but the ask for him was supposedly Clint Frazier and three other top prospects, which I think the Yankees just said, we don't think he's worth that. So, I don't know how to fix that necessarily. I think part of it is the two wildcard structure. If you can be an 87-win team, then you can make the playoffs. And so that rewards sort of not mediocrity, but it rewards being okay to good every year instead of really trying to be great.
I think you made a great point in your article, and you kind of just touched on that. I found it fascinating when you said the prospect hugging may have something to do with the two wild card structure. And I do think that's fascinating because it's still relatively new to some of us that you have two wild card spots plus your division winner. So in effect, I believe the point you were making was there's not that desperation maybe we saw. Again, I grew up a Giants guy. I remember finishing second with 100-plus wins to the 103-win Braves.
That was a crazy year.
Right. Yeah. And that's just, you have this sense of desperation because the playoffs were so very exclusive. So do you think part of it is that maybe that lack of desperation teams used to have before because they know that they've got a fairly decent shot at making the playoffs each and every year?
Yeah, I think that's it. And then also what you saw that was weird to some people was like some teams were buying, like the Mets bought. And even while they sold, the Diamondbacks bought. And the Reds bought, even though they're under 500 and they probably won't make the playoffs. What's happening there is that I think we're okay now, and we have a shot at the wild card next year. So let's look at our roster next year and do some building for next year. For the next 3-4 months, we have to put our pencils down. We can't do anything more. So we got to think about next year's roster too. And next year, we think we have a shot at the wild card because we're decent this year. So everybody wants to be decent. That's what it is. Everybody wants to be decent. They want to have prospects and they want to have teams control, players under control, and they want to be decent. And since everybody wants the same thing, that's why not much happened. Now the Astros, on the other hand, want to win it all. And they were willing to part with a decent prospect in Seth Beer. I mean, this was a guy was a high draft pick and can really slug the ball. So they gave up a decent prospect, even though Greinke was due a lot of money because they said, hey, we want to go into a postseason battle with Cole, Verlander, Greinke. Like, we want to blow everybody away. I say kudos to them. I think that the winners of the deadline, quote unquote, were the Astros for going all in, and then the Giants and D-backs for kind of playing the game best in terms of the modern game, selling and buying at the same time, making the roster better for next year while not really giving up on the wild card race this year.
Assuming MLB isn't going to eliminate one of the playoff teams and go back to a single wild card, is there anything they can do to kind of combat what you said, teams just kind of aiming for that second wild card spot, knowing they can win 87 or 88 games and get in? Is it moving the trade deadline back a couple of weeks? Is it reinstalling the post-deadline trade market? What can MLB do in that respect, if anything?
I think the big thing would be to make the wild card a bigger deal. Because part of why you kind of want to, keep our toe in the water for the wild card this year, but we also really want to win the wild card next year, but you don't want to go all in for the wild card. So you wouldn't make the Greinke trade if you were trying to win a wild card, because then you would have spent a lot of resources for one game, and if you lose that one game, the financial reward in the postseason is low, and the reward for your fans is pretty low. I mean, it is nice. You got a postseason game, but you got one.
Right.
And that was it. And I've experienced that. And at the same time, yes, the Giants won the wild card and won it all, and the other teams have done that. But if you made it a 3-game series, even, and I think that would just require just a little bit of cutting to spring training. If you made it a 3-game series, then people would say, ooh, this is maybe more of a financial boon for us. This is more of a big deal. This is a whole series. We won't just play one postseason game and be done. We at least have a chance of 2. If you make it a 5-game series, that's, I think that in other sports, the wild card is, like in football, it's a full game. Yes, the other teams get a bye, but it's a full playoff game. In basketball, it's not really the same wild card structure, but you still get a full series if you make the postseason. So that's what I would do. I think I would make the wild card more of a reward, and then maybe more teams would actually spend some prospects, spend some attention on winning the wild card, and not just being like, we won 86 games, we're a game out of the wild card, it's fine, we'll win the wild card next year, it's just one game anyway.
Talking with Eno Sarris from The Athletic. The Yankees, the Red Sox, the Dodgers were pretty quiet at the deadline. Fan bases for all 3 teams were not very happy. You kind of explained earlier in the segment about, teams are not willing to give up guys that they have on deals that are running, 3-4 years. Do you think those teams made a mistake, though, not trying to go all in to win the World Series this year?
I do, kind of. I do. I mean, just look at the Astros. They looked ahead and they said, you know what, these Yankees teams are great. Even with when they were reduced by injury, the Dodgers are going to be great. We're going to have, it's going to be a hard road to win a whole championship. So let's do something about winning a championship. Let's move that needle. And I think that the Yankees were just like, hey, we're going to just hope that Luis Severino comes back healthy, and that'll be our big deadline acquisition. So I don't think they did enough. The Dodgers, they called up Dustin May, their top pitching prospect, and they have Julio Urias, who on their team, who's kind of in waiting. He's a really good arm. So I think they just said, we have guys right now that are in sort of lesser roles that we can now feature, and that'll be our quote unquote trade deadline acquisition. So I guess that's what they thought. But I think the Dodgers could have really used a bullpen arm. I think maybe they thought it was Felipe Vasquez or bust. And Felipe Vasquez, they asked for Felipe Vasquez, who's got the best velocity for a left-handed reliever in the game right now, more than Aroldis Chapman, and is under team control on a team-friendly contract for like 3-4 years. The ask for him apparently was basically all their top prospects, and the Dodgers said, we'll figure it out.
Eno Sarris of The Athletic joining us. His article yesterday, Why the Sellers Were Buyers and the Buyers Were Sellers at this year's trade deadline. Up and extremely interesting to read. I want to hop back because you got my brain working now to the playoff structure and your point about making the wild card mean more. Let's just get a little bit crazy here. And I'm not one of those baseball's dying has to be fixed, but I do think baseball can do some things like loosening up their grasp on social media. There's some different tweaks they can do to put it more in the public eye. What if we move towards something, and again, I know this is kind of nuts, what if you cut the season back to 130 or 140 games, and what if you did go with an NBA-style almost playoff system? If you shorten the regular season, maybe you allowed 4 teams in each league to make the playoffs. Maybe the first round was just 5 games instead of 7, and maybe the top 2 teams in each league or the top team in each league gets a first round bye. I know that's broad, but do you think a system like that would work, and B, do you think baseball would ever consider shortening the season with the fact that stats are really and records are the baseline of the entire sport?
Yeah, and I think maybe a year or 2 ago, I would say I don't like it because I'm a stats guy,
right?
And I like having that uniformity. It's been 162 games for a long time, but and the flip side is I don't want necessarily the NBA playoff structure, because I actually think they've gone maybe too far in the other direction, where the playoffs take like 6 weeks, and at some point in the playoffs, you look up and you're like, what's going on? Are we not in the finals yet?
Right.
So I think NBA is a little bit like, you look at the 8th best teams in the weaker league sometimes, in like the East. Look at the 8th best team in the East, and you're just like, you're not a playoff team.
Yeah.
So let's not go as far as the NBA. However, now I think what you're talking about makes a lot of sense, and it's actually the only way to make some of this work. You either have to cut spring training,
yep,
which I think is pointless for a week or 2 at least. Pitchers say they could stretch out earlier on their own, or they can show up in February if they need to, or But hitters say they only need 2 or 3 weeks, and the rest of it is just to sell tickets to spring training games and not even pay the players. So spring training is a secret financial boon. If you want to cut spring training, you got to give the owner something else. And that something else is more playoff time. You want to cut regular season, you got to give them something else. That's playoff time. So, I think some of the small market teams might vote against it. It's all about politics in the end, about actually getting something done. But what you're talking about makes a lot of sense to me. I think, sometimes you look up in August in the same way that you look up in the NBA postseason. You look up in August in baseball, and you're like, wow, this season is long.
Yeah. Yep.
And there's so many injuries, and it's so rough on pitchers, and I could see really even 154, 140, just cutting down the regular season games so that you can make something out of the postseason. I would do that for sure.
Was there a move that was made yesterday that maybe didn't get a lot of attention, but really might come October, like it really might matter in the playoffs, even though it didn't get really talked about yesterday?
Well, I've been yelling at the Twins to improve their bullpen. I mean, they've been cutting relievers all year, and the bullpen's been an issue for them. Getting Sam Dyson could go either way, because sometimes, Sam Dyson, we've seen locally, he can, walk the bases loaded, or, because he's a little bit more of a pitch-to-contact guy, he can give up. You can give up a couple hits in a row. But when he's on, that's a turbo sinker. That is a crazy, crazy good sinker. And that addition to that Twins bullpen might be a big deal, because they have so many great hitters. Their starting rotation is pretty good. So I think the Dyson did one thing, went under the radar a little bit. I think that could be a big deal.
I have another bullpen-related question, and this is selfish because I am a big A's fan. I want to ask you about the A's real quick. What the heck is going on with Blake Treinen this year? Have you studied that at all?
Yes, I've talked to him about it in great length. Me and Blake sort of check in with each other a lot. He's a secret pitching nerd, and one of the things that we talked about was the new ball. So the ball we had, Dr. Meredith Wills is both a knitter and an astrophysicist, and she took apart the balls and looked at how smooth the leather was, how high the seams were, what the center was like. And she found 3 key differences between last year and this year in the ball, and all of those lead to A, the ball flying further. That's why we're seeing so many, we're seeing home run records drop.
Mm-hmm.
But B, there's got to be some implications for command and control. I couldn't necessarily find them. A lot of players are using more pine tar in order to get a better grip on the ball now that it's smoother. But I don't think Blake's doing that, and I think what's happening is that he's just sort of struggling to find the movement on his turbo sinker with the new ball. That's I think what I would say.
That makes sense.
But recently he's found a way forward by mixing his pitches more, and he's up to 3-4 pitches that he uses regularly. So I think that might be the way out for him.
Yeah, a lot more sliders lately.
Last thing for you, Sarris of the Athletic, other Bay Area team that we reached, the San Francisco Giants. You made a note in there. They kind of dipped their big toe in the water as much as anyone. Do you think they got better? They got worse, or are they just kind of flatlining on the trade deadline yesterday?
I thought it was amazing. I think Farhan Zaidi, the GM dad, gets an A+. And I think he did exactly what he learned from Billy Beane in Oakland, which is, buying and selling is just about each individual deal. And, you have to look at the big picture, but you also have to look at each deal. And I think getting Mauricio Dubon, the prospect that they got from the Brewers for Pomerantz and Ray Black, was a maesterstroke. I'm not sure that Dubon is a huge prospect, but at least he looks like a good backup sort of utility player. And he'll be super cheap and under team control for a while. And to get that for, guys like Pomerantz and Black, who were kind of up and down, organizational depth kind of guys, I think that was really brilliant. And at the same time, to buy Scooter Gennett, who's a legitimate power threat on the infield, that was, I just thought it was amazing. I thought it was a really, really good deadline for him.
Well, one thing that you noted too, Mark Melancon, the Giants traded him, and his contract, which I believe has a little over $18 million remaining on it this year and next year, will be fully picked up by the team he was traded to. I did some number crunching, and that tells me you can get quite a few subscriptions to The Athletic monthly for the price of Mark Melancon's remaining contract. It is the best journalism when you want to talk about both national, local. In fact, we talked yesterday about Armand Catan's video profile of Colin Cowherd, which was, I thought, excellent. So you've got video content there as well. You hear us talking with guys like Sam Amick and Matt Barrows, Jason Jones, all who are now members of The Athletic. So I always, whenever we have somebody from The Athletic on, encourage you to read their stuff, and you got to subscribe to read it, but boy, is it worth it. We appreciate your time, Thank you for letting me do that long, convoluted plug, and we'll talk to you soon.
Any day. Oh, and you know what else that Mark Melancon money might buy is one Madison Bumgarner.
Oh, look at that. And today's Madison Bumgarner's birthday. He turns 30. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
The Drive.